Good morning, afternoon, evening, MSP friends and family. Welcome to Partner First, where we bring in subject matter experts to improve your business. I'm your Taco Tuesday host, Dean Trempellis, continuing my Hawaiian shirt takeover. Today we'll be talking about MSP Helpdesk phishing with a focus on lessons learned from the MGM attack. That's phishing with a PH, the pretty hot kind of phishing. And we'll be featuring Gene Reich, founder of Traceless. And just as a reminder to everybody, the webinar is being recorded. You can find it on all of the platforms you like and some of the platforms you don't. And the slide deck will be available as well. All right, let's get this party started. Can we bring on Gene?
Hey, what's up, Dean?
How bad did I butcher your last name? I just called you Gene Reich instead of Gene.
Rich. I mean, it's okay. I missed your chat, man. I should pay attention.
It was the inner.
It's all good.
Yeah, I apologize.
It's fine. And what's up to the rest of the OIT crew? I haven't seen you guys in person for a minute, so it's nice to have some support on this webinar.
Yeah, we already got some people in the chat, which is awesome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm really excited for this one. Just full disclosure to everybody, at my MSP before OIT, we actually used Traceless, and it was a really, really cool product. And unlike a lot of the other things I used, I didn't have any agency in the decision making. I was kind of handed Traceless. So I can't wait to really get into this more with you.
Great.
So I guess why don't you tell us a little bit about, I know we're not really here to like plug only Traceless, but why don't you tell us a little bit about Traceless for everybody?
Yeah, so Traceless was started in 2019. I was actually part of ConnectWise. So let's rewind the clock a little bit more. Arnie Bellini, before he left ConnectWise, right? He was really focused on cybersecurity. He felt that that was the next big thing for the industry. And he started what they call the CISA think tank. And it was an invite-only peer group under the Evolve umbrella, where we were talking about, like what's happening in the industry, what actually is an MSSP, what products do you think that we need? How are you pricing and packaging this service to your customers? Where the gaps were in the market for support for MSPs. And, the last one, but certainly not like the least, was basically how MSPs are protecting their own company, right, from threat actors. And it was really interesting because this was a time where, as an MSP owner, it was moving from, like we have a backup of our stuff and we're running patching and antivirus, we're good, right? To like nothing is good enough, right? It's pretty frightening when you change that exposure that you have, so yeah, it's from that group that I found my own security hole that I felt like I needed to plug within Traceless. Within my MSP, and that's why I started Traceless. Specifically on the original side, focused on verification of customers calling in and sending and receiving sensitive information without leaving it at rest. And it's been an interesting 4 years, and I think that our paradigm shift of what we need to do as MSPs and how we need to treat sensitive information is starting to get a little bit more mainstream, which is super fun. And we're grateful because, like when I started, I was like, I'm going to protect all my friends and protect MSPs. And it was really a calling to help myself, but also help the community, right? So that's where we started. And we've got a lot of new products coming out the door at the end of this year. And integrations, and we're going to go into next year doing some really interesting things in the industry. Really excited about it.
So I got to ask, because I would ask this to any MSP owner or former MSP owner, what made your MSP special? Because we all think our MSPs are special. So what was your unique experience?
So what makes that business special?
Well, specifically yours. What did you guys do different? What was interesting, special? You guys were a Mac shop, right?
Yeah, so we're always the weirdos doing Apple stuff. So like shout out to all my other peers who are just as weird doing Apple stuff. It's like definitely, and that's funny because that's how I got invited to this CISO think tank. Andrew Morgan, who's a great guy in the industry, he actually, before that was my account manager for True Methods. So we had like, a transition, and he said, hey, Gene, I know you're in this Mac peer group, because we had a little peer group, and we'd pester the hell out of ConnectWise. Why is Automate not working on the Apple platform? This is not good enough. And you said it was going to be web-based. It's not. We don't want to run VMware on our machines. So we're a pretty like small group of loud people, which sometimes is the case in the industry. And a lot of people would be like, "Whoa, like how do you make money?" You're like, wait, you can make money like servicing Apple equipment? And it's been 18 years, and there's always been consistent opportunity, but the opportunity that we face right now as an MSP in the focus of Apple is never. It's like the most incredible time to be in the business that we're in. So our focus is Apple, Google Workspace, and Okta. We're a CrowdStrike partner as well. So a little bit different than some of the normal MSP stack of tools that people support.
So I think one of your first slides, dramatic foreshadowing, talks about how hard it is to run an MSP. But yeah. I mean, like as an Apple MSP, I know anybody with a brain knows that an Apple computer isn't immune from security issues. But you would think out of all the platforms to manage, Apple's probably the most closed environment. It's the most tightly controlled. It's just interesting to me that an Apple-focused MSP would say, there's a gap in the market here. I need to fill it. I wouldn't think you would be the MSP that would identify that. I would maybe not say immune, but I would think less susceptible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the early days of being an Apple consultant was just passion for the brand and the technology that they were making, right? It was like, it came from a true, deep, personally connected experience unboxing an iPod, right? I mean, that's like, blew my mind. I was like, this is crazy. And that kind of led me down that path. And I think the early days, you had a very big mix of classic creative industry businesses like video, post-production, photo, post-production, marketing agencies, marketing companies, that kind of stuff. And then you had a handful of people who came from a corporate America environment, which was all Windows, that started their own business that said, whatever I need to do, I'm not using Windows anymore. And that was a core business for a very, very long time. Apple really did an incredible job calling out what I would say is like modern directory MDM kind of thing, right? And not directory, but modern ways to manage devices, right? I think a lot of the Windows paradigms of having, profile management and mobile home folders or portable home folders, I forget which is a classic term for the Windows environments, but having that, and then all the policies enforced through Active Directory and an actual controller on-prem, all that was basically in the cloud for the Apple environments way before, because they killed their server product.
Right, with your Apple ID being sort of your one truth to your products.
Kind of. I mean, the way that Apple did it was like, if you buy laptops or desktops through your business account, we're going to allow you to automatically affiliate them with your business, right? And then enforce management policies and procedures. So with the loss of Xserve, which was the last enterprise piece of hardware running server stuff, and then they had OS X server on the Mac Mini, right, which was useful until it wasn't. And it's like, what do you do to manage all these devices? And Apple was like, we're going to get out of that business and put our platform in an open API, kind of like, this is what you can do to manage these things. Here's a paradigm. And I think that really allowed them to really surpass a lot of years of Microsoft moving towards endpoint manager. And I think the thing about Microsoft is, that they're going to come for Okta's lunch, right? I'm hearing more about it all the time, right? They're coming for Slack's lunch. That's just how they roll, right? Intune's coming for Apple device management's lunch, right? Like any MDM player out there knows Intune is coming to be the player to manage all the devices, right? So it's been a pretty interesting evolution. And then you had COVID, which totally wrecked the supply chain. And I think you had a lot of big enterprise mid-market companies that couldn't get PCs for 9 months, 10 months, that could get Apple products in a month or two.
That was our experience.
And the deployment methodologies, zero touch deployment, Apple coined that thing, man. I mean, that's it. And so, you had all that happening with the kind of like adoption of SaaS tooling, right? Which basically basically if you have Chrome, you're good. So all of these things kind of like happening at the same time made it a perfect time for Apple to move into the business sector. And then they had a Trojan horse, which was the iPhone, right? And so the iPhone, I mean, that was like, that got a lot of people really interested in the experience that Apple provides. And I think we're going to see dramatic growth of their desktop, laptop, particularly the laptops, in the commercial market in the coming years. And also their silicon chips are like insane. So I mean, you have like laptops that are better than the top line Intel a year prior that last 20 hours a day on battery. I mean, it was really like when I got my first M1 device, my mind exploded. It was like another crazy tech experience. So
with the entire ecosystem you just described, and with the fact that Microsoft and Google on their own respective platforms are really kind of trying to catch up and provide the same experience, how are we even here? Like, how does this even begin to happen? How do you even execute a phishing attack? It sounds at this point like, and I think even in the breach we're going to talk about, they were using Okta, they were using identity management, they were using MDM, they were doing everything right, and yet this still happened. And it's not a new concept, right? I mean, like, I grew up with like war games and hackers and sneakers and swordfish. I mean, each one of those movies is literally about this, and it kind of seems like the breakdown isn't my technology. It kind of sounds like the breakdown's my people. Like
100%.
Like, we're dumb.
Humans are I mean, humans are the weakest link, and they will continue to be until we have chips in our brains, and then it'll be frightening for us as a species. But I think that's going to be the case forever, right? And a lot of what you're talking about, I think was based on Kevin Nicknick, who is like a very prolific old school hacker, brilliant technologist. But where he was like more brilliant was just gaming humans. I mean, that was his jam. Like he basically got people to believe in stuff that didn't exist, or believe that he was something he wasn't, or whatever. And then that was the open door, right? So I think that what we're seeing right now is we have some open doors, and that's where attackers will go, right?
So it's like
anything, really.
We were talking before we went live about the MGM attack, and I kind of made the joke that like that big glowing orb they put in Vegas, like when is somebody going to hack into that and put
live coverage, live coverage
on it? But like it kind of
in the background,
not even going to be about finding that they left like their an RDP port open. It sounds more like I'm like reading an old book in the 80s about phone phreaking. Like, this is more about social engineering, about tricking people into giving me access.
Totally.
So I don't know if you want to bring up the slide deck or death by PowerPoint, but like, why don't you talk us a little bit through what happened at MGM? How did this happen?
Great. So if we just go through some of the early stuff, right? We talked about where I was, what I've done, still rocking the MSP, doing Traceless as well. And so I think if we like just zoom out a little bit,
Sure.
right? I think, this is also a call out to all of my peers. I mean, when the MGM thing happened and, first you hear this casino got breached, right? And you're like, oh, like another, crazy rich corporation got hit,
Right.
I'm sure they did something dumb. It's like whatever we think, which is
You
sometimes
assume it
not.
has to
Yeah.
be either like a password 123 situation or something
Correct.
like a nation state
Crazy
actor,
bleeding
sold
edge.
them poison Cisco, devices, or, something on that level.
Yep. Yeah. But it was an MSP, right? And so,
Whoops.
when we hear that, really, it's like when an MSP gets hit and it causes the headlines to read like they did, it's all of us. It's not just that
Right.
MSP, it's the industry that takes a hit. And what's unfortunate is that we're not going to hear of all of the MSPs that saved the day for all the companies that they did, or all the great work that they did preventative, and all the learnings and all the battles they went to get their customers to implement an MDR. Like nobody's going to ever report on
Right.
that crap, right? So it's tough, right? All we hear is like, oh, this MSP got owned, right? And then it's like, what is going on? And it's like a excuse me, it's kind of like one of the realities of I think where we live is like a lot of the media is like sometimes the negative stuff, right? They're not really like focused on, oh, look at this person like helping an old lady across the street. It's
So
just not like that.
thinking about that fact that it was an MSP that got owned, I know, relationships, you can do a million positive things. It takes one negative to tank the relationship.
Yeah.
The slide we just had up was talking about, tools and tool creep. I I was an operations manager at an MSP. I had a pretty decent MSP. They got pretty big and pretty operationally mature. And even at that size, I didn't have an infinite budget for tools, nor
Yeah.
did I want more tools. And like I had said before, when my MSP got acquired by the MSP that was using Traceless, and they're like, you're going to use Traceless now. My first thought wasn't, oh, cool, I'm excited. It was like another tool. Like, what are you doing to me? So how does a tool slot in to help me manage people? Like how do I use a tool? I already don't want to pay for a tool. I'm already aggravated at my cogs and my operations mindset. How is a tool going to help me keep a person from giving another person access to something? Like it's like telling me that like a tool is going to prevent the guy with the clipboard and the polo shirt walking around confidently from not
Yeah.
entering the job site. I mean, just jump the fence. The fence is literally, you jump right over it. So how's that work?
Right. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I think you spoke to a lot of real challenges in operating an MSP or any business really, but we're here to talk about MSP stuff. So it's tough running a small business, right? And I always tell the story, and it's like kind of a joke, but it's actually 100% true. First year at IT Nation, I walk into the vendor pavilion as an MSP, right? I was like, oh my God, I've been missing out. I'm a Luddite. I'm running my business like garbage, like whatever, right? So I bought a bunch of tools. And then the next year, it's like the same thing. You go back and you always get all that hype after being,
Right.
and this is why like events are so cool to go to, is that you get really stoked about what you're doing professionally, and you're not firefighting, and you're like having meaningfully like beneficial conversations with peers. You're learning all that stuff, right? But I joke that like the second year we bought tools to help us manage the tools that we bought the year before, right? Or consulting services to manage the
Yes.
tools that we thought were easy. And then the third year I was like, yo, I'm just gonna go, but I'm not gonna buy anything because I can't. I gotta like decrease the tool creep, right? Um, and I think that that's also a big part of ConnectWise's ecosystem is the marketplace, and having like a, and same with Salesforce and ServiceNow. I mean, they all are saying like you can do anything on our platform thanks to our partners, right?
Right.
But they all cost money. They all take time to implement, operationally speaking, and then you got to manage people to use them properly. Next year we're going to launch some more like persistent threat products and other tooling that doesn't really require human like engagement, right? But part of Traceless now, a big part is like people making the right choice to use the right tool, right? And to do the right process. And so I think a lot of what we spent time on is how do we make it very effective to implement very quickly, very easy for people to see and to use.
I
And look, it's not perfect.
loved the
It's not
pod
perfect, right?
inside manage and basically
Yeah,
having a
we were
single
one of the
pane of
first
glass.
apps
Yeah.
in the pod. Yeah, it was crazy because when ConnectWise launched that, before I started Traceless, I was like, it was like right around the same time. I was like, what are we going to do with this? Right. And then I started Traceless and I'm like, this is brilliant. And so it's been good from that perspective. But I think, if you guys can go back to the slides, I think that this is a really interesting way to holistically look at the adoption of technology in general.
Right.
Right. And, my buddy Drew at Times Us, he's spoken about this before. And we could look at this as MSPs to think about how we sell into our customers. Right. And I think we're, for identity verification on the help desk, unfortunately, we're still in the early adopters phase.
For sure.
And I think that that's really challenging from a perspective of what we saw with MGM. And I think that people are starting to prioritize this. Because again, like we said, it's like very difficult to prioritize what to do, what to buy. And so, this is the cycle, right? And I believe that in 5 years, maybe 10, every help desk will be doing some form of identity verification because we should, right? I mean, that'd be like if banks didn't verify you calling in, you'd probably be very pissed. You literally own the credentials to tank a business. Like every customer of every MSP, right? We have all of their stuff, their email, their file sharing. It's like the intellectual property of businesses today is digital, right? It's not like, sure,
Right.
They're still manufacturing customers. I'm not downplaying that industry at all, but like most of us are supporting that critical infrastructure for people. And, we really need to think about that job that we've taken on, right?
Well, and when you talk
lens,
about the adoption too, I think back to like the MSP I was at, pretty high operational maturity level MSP, pretty sophisticated, good client base. Our solution until someone else told me I had this problem was, well, we know all our clients personally. So that's our identity management. We talk to these people so much. I would know if that wasn't, Sandy calling me. I would know if that wasn't Bob calling me. And to my brain, like that was fine. And it wasn't until our next MSP when the support staff there, I asked them that same question, like, what do you mean know all of our clients? We don't know every single one of our clients. Why would we know that? And I was like, well, but how do you make sure the person calling you is who they say they are? And they were like, we don't worry about that. We have a tool to manage that. I had never even considered the product category. And then once I learned about it was that thing like when I bought a Subaru, I only see Subarus on the highway. I only saw other tools that solve this problem. But like, I thought we had our act together. Like we were doing a lot of really good things. And I didn't even consider this was a whole at all.
Yeah. And I think it's also good to acknowledge that, going back to, we don't have to look at the slides, but the first slide, it's hard running a business. And we are all at our own stage of evolution of how we're running our business, right? And there's nothing, we're all trying as hard as we can, right? And it's just the way life is, right? And I think that for anyone listening who's like, oh man, I guess I have to do this, or it's just like, and Phil just commented, watch out for AI voices. Yeah, I mean, that's basically on my slide because that's happening also, right? And it's like any hacking tool, it becomes easier to adopt and use, and then it goes down market. And guess what? A lot of us MSPs are servicing down market businesses. So like, why do people adopt technology? The industry evolving, You could think of AV going from AV to MDR, right? MDR is like, first there's AV, then next gen AI
Right.
driven AV, then MDR, right? That's an evolution piece, right? Threat landscape. I think, we're in this topic of this, webinar is really a change in the threat landscape that we're seeing. And I think that we also are starting to have MSPs come to us and saying, yeah, a customer is requiring that we do this. Right. So I think that
Right.
you're going to see like more regulation happen generally in business. Right. And then with that regulation is going to come more standards that are going to have to be enforced. And with that will become adoption of tools. Right. And so I think that that's where we're at. Yeah, and so going back to what happened with MGM,
Because they
it's
had,
like,
correct me if I'm wrong, I'm definitely not a security guy, but there was MDM, there was MFA set up. There were the
yeah,
normal, now reasonable things that 10 years ago would have been unreasonable. There was MFA set up. There was a process to do a reset on your account, and even with those things in place, because I mean, right, MFA is supposed to be magical. If you have MFA set up, then you're unhackable.
yeah, right.
Still, we gained access. How'd they do that? I mean, the MSP made a mistake, but I'd like to think that most people in our industry aren't like intentionally weaponized stupid. So how did this happen?
I think what happened was like the attackers were looking on LinkedIn because I read a post about this. Again, there's been a lot of a lot of news, and I think that we'll have to take news with a grain of salt.
Right.
I don't think the MSP declared a breakdown. I mean, MGM didn't probably go into the depth that it could have with this MSP, right? But like what I heard or from what I read was that the attacker found somebody on LinkedIn, a newer candidate or newer employer of that MSP, and kind of worked them, right? And so, this is a very common thing, right? We had in my MSP, it's like kind of cute, fun, but like there's been people who text my employees at the MSP and basically saying like, "Hello, this is Gene Rich, your boss.
Yeah, we get that. I
Like,
get texts
please,
all the time
please
from
go
Ray
get
Orsini.
me. Okay, please
Yeah.
go get me $1,200 in Apple gift cards at Walmart. I'm in a bad place, And
Ray,
so,
you haven't reimbursed me
okay,
for those,
fine.
by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like that that's coming, right? And that's like we determined the only way that this person found out the link between myself and my employer was LinkedIn, right? And so, we're not as a people going to stop being on these platforms that are publicly accessible with very simple information, but in the right, lens, potentially dangerous, right? And so the help desk got phished. It was the MSP. And look, I think what happens after what happens next, was sophisticated, right? But like it wasn't crazy how they got in. And by the way, another very, very big company, Okta, had a breach, right? And guess what? That was their service desk, right? And 170 customers were affected. And guess what? 1Password and Cloudflare were 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 phished, and 1Password, it was their service desk, right? 1Password stopped it pretty quick. Cloudflare stopped it right away as well. I think 1Password they got in, but nothing crazy happened. But again, these are like these are 4 help desk related phishing hacks in the last 60 days, right? We need to do something about it.
So what, I
It's
mean,
it's not,
what do
you
you
know,
do? All right, I'm a help desk employee at MSP Co. We
yeah,
have a basic change management policy in place because we're not a dumpster fire. We have MFA enforced in all of the applications that we manage. We have a
yeah,
ticketing system. We have an intergroup chat for escalation. So I get a phone call or a case in that's from presumably an end user saying, hey, I got locked out of my, I'll actually use a real one from OIT. I was on a trip and I think I violated our, GeoIP policy. And so I got locked out of my Microsoft account. Can you reset that for me? Totally reasonable request. That's a normal thing. The right information is provided for me. That employee was on a trip, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know this person, they were on a trip. All right. What else do I do at that point, short of directly asking that person in another medium, which in a small company you might have the luxury of doing, but I can't text my client on like their personal phone from my personal phone and be like, hey Bob, I know we had drinks last night. Can you verify that you just asked me this? Like, I don't have that relationship with my clients that I might with a coworker.
Yeah.
How do I protect against that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Early days, Traceless, we had a lot of people running to our platform, right? They're like, "Thank God you guys started this company. We've been losing sleep over this," right? Those were larger companies. They were more mature, like you were talking about, right? But as we started doing more outbound work and having more conversations, we've seen all sorts of solutions for this, right? So again, going back to tool creep. I think that this is a process change problem. Tooling is just a part of the solution, right? So we've had MSPs that have code words stored in IT glue for their customers,
Pineapple.
right, to get support. Yeah, exactly. And then we've had people who hang up the phone and call them back, right? Which is like, man, I get it, but it takes time and it's a horrible customer experience.
That's what we used to
right?
do. We had
Yeah,
that.
and I'm not being critical. I'm just saying, like, man, it's tough, right? But you're
Password
doing the good
resets took
work.
like 25 minutes because of that.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that when you start talking, well, at least when Traceless gets in a room and we start brainstorming about all the ways that we can benefit businesses, the roadmap is super deep on this one topic of interest, right? Which is a part of our platform. And I think that having a process is the first step, because then you're bringing awareness to your help desk and you're starting to manage a different process. Whether you can, we think our product's extremely affordable. A lot of feedback we get is we're not charging enough, or whatever. People are very generous in that way. But that being said, I think that we're currently doing a basic SMS, relay type verification. We've heard of people using badge numbers or employee ID information, but all that info is available potentially to be.
I do want to give you
used, right?
a quick vendor shout out. So one of my MSP pet peeves that I know a lot of our people watching would agree. I love you have pricing.
Yeah.
Pricing's on your website. Thank you for doing that. More, whether you like it or hate the pricing, the fact that it's there. More vendors need to do this. This is amazing. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. And you see here we have we're bringing Traceless into Slack and into Teams, so we're super stoked about that. We're spinning up a data loss prevention application that's driven by AI. So that's in the early or the low 90s in accuracy. So we're really trying to move the needle for people and protecting their sensitive information. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we, as a SaaS company, we've talked to vendors and we've gone through like massive sales processes only to find out that the price wasn't like we literally just couldn't, right? Like even if we just couldn't, right? And we had sunk in hours on both sides. And so for us, you can go to our website, purchase, sign up, integrate, and invite your team in like 10 minutes. And then you're using the tool, right? So I think that that's early days. We spent a lot of time trying to focus on that experience because it's hard adopting tools sometimes, right? Like, again, going back to tool creep, that's difficult. And so, I think that Per the comment of Mr. Bond, sorry, that was what's up. So what's up, Mr. Bond? From Phil, watch out for the AI voices. I think that imagine like running an internet script of LinkedIn businesses under 50 people, and then finding their CEO's voice on the internet somewhere, and having a robot crawl the web and put all this together.
I was looking at an
not rocket
AI-based
science.
LinkedIn tool the other day that will analyze your profile and come back with what, based on your posts and everything you have, what it thinks your disk profile is and what it thinks your adapted disk profile is. So not only can you replicate a voice and content, but you could potentially now even replicate delivery style, value proposition. It's scary how easy it's becoming to AI fake someone. In fact, I've been an AI this whole time. I'm just kidding. But like, that's almost how easy it is at this point.
Yeah, totally. And it's just going to keep evolving. So I think, anybody who's out there who's listening as an MSP, it's hard work. It's hard to implement. It's hard managing people. This is a big one. Everyone needs to try to do something around this topic. Obviously, we think you should buy Traceless, but I'm happy to support people in the industry doing something rather than nothing. And I think that that's part of being in the community, is like really trying to get people to rise to better standards. And honestly, Dean, like I shared the story in 2019, we were just emailing people passwords.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible to say that, but we adopted ConnectWise way before, and we didn't have encrypted email because we're on Google, of course. And, that was like beta for the first 5 years and whatever it was. Right. And we were doing something that was a bad idea. We hadn't had the time to sit and assess the problem.
Or even,
I think that's
and not even in a security context, just like everybody's been there where like you've got like the weird hardware vendor on site with no planning, and you've created the service account for them, and you're trying to read off this, like 60 character, password over the phone to some, poor vendor who's only there for 2 hours and was in the car for 5 hours before that. And the whole thing's just painful and it sucks. And then you use those websites to let you securely send a file, but like, and so we ended up using our email security and hardware security vendor Captive Portal to send encrypted files. That sucked.
Yeah, and I think what's crazy is that like, our commitment at Traceless on the data side is to not leave any information at rest. And it's kind of like a crazy thing because earlier this year, another huge breach, probably bigger than any other breach, honestly. MGM was like definitely like, I think, a relatable breach to households, right? Like my mom knew about it.
Yeah,
that's like a great gauge of like, what I mean by that is like, the other one was MoveIt, and MoveIt is a SaaS tool to move files and store them securely.
Yeah.
Right. And that one is gnarly. Like Google it, look at it. It is bad. And then, the other one that happened, encrypted email on Office 365 in our government got breached by China, which is, like it was from like a crazy obscure crash log that had a piece of information to get in. Our thing, okay, so in the rant about breaches, they're going to keep happening. Sensitive information sitting at rest causes damage, right? And so that's kind of our persistent commitment to the community, is to not leave that data at rest and to allow people to send and receive information easily. And something else I just wanted to include, because we didn't talk about it, was in the identity verification side, this week we're launching Duo. So if you're an MSP and you standardize on Duo, you can use Duo to send push notifications to customers within Manage, Autotask, ServiceNow to verify their identity. And probably by the end of November, we'll have Azure AD.
Can I do that all from inside my PSA without having to exit the PSA?
Yeah, right in the pod, It's slick and easy.
That's awesome.
And because I think, look, we're all nerds, right? So you get in the weeds with us. Sometimes people are like, and just a shout out to everyone who doesn't think SMS is secure. Okay, like it's not the most secure thing. I get it's like got some weaknesses here and there. It's better than nothing. So we decided that we would, get behind the organizations that we felt that businesses were gating their identity with, so we can support. Again, not saying here's another tool to install and another app all your clients need. It's like, use the thing you got, just use it in a different lens. So we're super excited about that.
That's pretty cool. And I know that you're not, I warned him ahead of time I was going to ask this. I know you're not the only player in the space who's working on various forms of this concept. So if I've listened to this presentation and you've sold me on the idea, I need a tool that I can use for identification verification. I like convenience, and not having sensitive data at rest is important to me. Why would I pick you over a couple of the other vendors that people may have top of mind? Like what would make you a little bit different or more interesting, or besides the fact that you publish your pricing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. I think it's tough, right? There's so many tools that try to do so many things, right? And so what you have is like a bunch of average functions, right, from one tool. I think what we've really tried to do at Traceless is focus on the few things that we do, making that process very easy to use, and the tooling works all the time. So that's one of the feedbacks, which is super rad at events, is people come up to us and we're like, hey, your tool is too cheap and it works all the time. Like, thank you. And I think that's us, right? That's how we built the product.
Right.
We also have taken security very seriously. We're SOC 2 Type 2 certified. And that's like a whole other thing when you get to be a vendor. I don't know, Dean, did you ever set up integrations in ConnectWise Manage?
I sure have.
So like back in the day, everyone was like, everyone's like, be an admin, right? Just give us admin access to your entire ConnectWise API database, right? And when I got on the vendor side and I'm like, okay, so we need 4 data points. I'm like, because we're like always minimum. Like, how do we reduce risk? Like all that stuff, right? And I almost went on a huge tirade to be like, no more admin users for any vendor, right?
Well,
and I think the industry is getting better.
It's the SaaS version of my copier guy being like, just give me a domain admin account and I'll take care of setting up the copier. I would never do that in a network. Why would I do that with the API for my most critical ticketing system that all of that flows through?
Yep. Yeah, and like the likelihood of a supply chain attack coming through a third-party app is probably very high, right? I mean, this is like, there was a Kaseya plugin in ConnectWise Automate that caused a really bad stream of MSPs waking up to their entire environments being encrypted. The Kaseya hack was a supply chain hack. I mean, again, ConnectWise now warns MSP admins on the ConnectWise managed infrastructure that you shouldn't be admins, and you're basically removing liability from ConnectWise. But I think I'd encourage all us MSPs, if you get a new vendor who's integrating to your tool and they're asking for access that you don't understand or you don't agree with, you should push back, because I think that's good for those vendors to get that feedback. Because again, it's hard running a business. People just try to make it easy. Just do the admin thing, right? It's like,
so there's some homework for anybody who's watching this. If you use ConnectWise, and you're still using, especially if you're on an older implementation, you're probably still using the default like 5 to 8 security profiles that ConnectWise gave you. Anytime you edit one of those, you should be going in and making a specific one and assigning it the explicit permissions it needs only to execute those functions in the PSA. And you should be naming it uniquely so that you have auditing. So anybody using ConnectWise, go back and do that. There is stuff on the university for how to do that now.
Yeah, and I think any vendor, I'd like to encourage vendors to work towards SOC 2 Type 2. It's expensive and it's a total pain in the ass, but like we have a job to do, right? If we are integrating with people's businesses, we need to show a level of responsibility and again, encouraging MSPs to ask for these things.
Well, there's I know we only got a few minutes left. I used to have it on my desk here. I had a book that Brad Gross wrote, the MSP lawyer. And that's one of the things he's been encouraging MSPs to do for a while, is to basically state in your MSAs what your downstream liability is and what vendors are or are not cooperating with that. So our clients as vendors are already starting to be encouraged to distance themselves from us. So it's also important from a business survivability standpoint to take this seriously as a vendor.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Before I forget,
Dean, are we going to see you in Florida?
That's what I was about to ask you. Yeah, so I'll be at IT Nation. Will you?
Yeah, we'll be there in spirit. We won't be in the vendor pavilion this year. We moved our official sponsorship to next year. But if you see myself or any one of my peers, if we're there in this tie-dye jumpsuit, come say what's up. Get a drink. I mean, it's just very fun for me going to these events. Being a vendor, I was like, great. I'm not going to any, MSP talks. This is super chill. All I have to do is like be a vendor. But then it's like super exhausting to be a vendor because you're like yelling at people in a loud room for hours upon hours, standing on your feet,
tiring.
Staying up late, trying to get one more lead, whatever. So this year, I'm just going as the dude Gene floating around.
That's awesome.
So find me. Yeah, let's hang out, talk shop.
You got any extra tie-dye jumpsuits that if somebody knows you and they say the right secret word, they can get one?
So we talked about doing some, like, we get this question a lot, right? And so I go back and forth with Peter, my co-founder, about getting like underwear made and like keeping it in the booth, but like not visible. And then if someone like asks us, hey, do you have in it? Like we just give them like a pair of unisex underwear. That might actually be a thing next year. So keep your hopes high for that. But the direct answer is you got to come work for Traceless to get a jumpsuit. So if we have any other clothing collabs with other brands, which is definitely part of our vision, get on our newsletter, and we'll keep you posted. We'll probably have one or two next year if things do what we need to do.
I want really one, fun. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, thanks for the love.
So that's what. So here's how to reach Traceless. Thank you, Phil, because I wasn't doing my job there. Phil, what upcoming events do we have here on MMN?
Well, you just witnessed our latest Partner First webinar, and if you missed it, you can go back and watch it on our YouTube channels. But coming up tomorrow, we got a new episode of AI Roundup focused on ChatGPT and DALL-E 3. It's going to be a fun one. Then on Friday, we got a double dose of Marnie Stockman. She's going to be on MSP Community Live at 11, followed by a new book on Bits and Books. That is Leaders Eat Last at 12. So make sure you check that out. And as always, the MSP Dispatch is on Tuesdays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Gene, it was a pleasure talking to you today. Besides your email and LinkedIn, which we can use to fish you, anywhere else they can get a hold of you? Are you on are you on the Reddits? Are you in the Discords? Are you trolling anywhere?
Yeah, it was actually really funny. We were using an ad for a Reddit ad, and it was a Twitter post from VX. What is it? I have to look it up now. They're a great, very interesting group of people. It's called VX Underground, right? And so they're actually like a kind of like a free information composite of malware. And we just got called out on their Twitter, like, don't use our shit for making money and whatever. It's all good. We messaged them and took care of business. But like, yeah, I think, LinkedIn it was pretty interesting. But LinkedIn's probably the best place to get us, or our website. And just reach out.
That's a challenge to the audience.
MSP, whatever.
Call Traceless after this and try and fish Gene's accounts using his LinkedIn.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for being on today.
Perfect.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun. Good to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All right. Take care.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.